Hello there, boys and girls, and welcome to It's a Shaw Thing. I'm your host, Rob Shaw, talking some fantasy football today. It's time to get you caught up with the news and notes, only to be found right here at opensports.com. Let's start right off the bat at the quarterback position for Seattle. It looks like, once again, Matt Hasselbeck will not be in action this weekend. He has not gained medical clearance to participate in practice. Fact is, he's got now a leg injury because of that bulging disc in his back. He's got all sorts of issues. Even when he was healthy, none of his wide receivers were. He hadn't thrown for over 200 yards in any of the games so far this season. This past weekend, nice performance by Seneca Wallace, but even he is going to be a liability when it comes to fantasy sports this weekend when they go up against a pretty good team in the NFC East. So right now, the Seahawks, not much to invest in. I'd look for other options. As far as Hasselbeck, he's honestly probably best off on the waiver wire. Even when he does come back, he needs to prove that he's capable of putting up some decent numbers, such as years past, before we gobble him up and put him in our starting lineup. All right, next up, Jason Witten of the Dallas Cowboys. The number 2 fantasy tight end so far this season, number 1 when it comes to receiving yards, broke his rib this past weekend. It just gets worse and worse for the Dallas Cowboys these days. The fact is, his quarterback's already not healthy, not playing in Tony Romo. So there you go. He's going to have some fewer yards because of that, and he has had fewer yards with Brad Johnson struggling as a signal caller so far. Well, he does expect to play. He said he wants to play against the New York Giants, understandably so. That is a big rival of them Cowboys. But right now, Jason Witten is not the most reliable of tight ends, but there's not many other good ones out there. So I probably would start Witten, but be careful. He does have a broken rib. He might aggravate an injury and end up coming out of that game. You know, I'm not really sure how you aggravate a rib injury. I don't know. Right, anyway, Tim Hightower, running back of the Arizona Cardinals, backup running back, may become the starting running back soon, my friends. Coach really likes this guy, keeps on talking about him, but there's 3 reasons to be a little reserved with him. Number 1, the fact is that he's only had 10 carries in 1 game so far this year. Every other game was in single digits. Next up, as far as those opportunities he has had, he hasn't exactly thrived. He's averaging 2.7 yards per carry. That's something Edgerrin James could do. And finally, this is a passing offense, my friends. You want Anquan Bolden, Larry Fitzgerald, Kurt Warner, Steve Breaston. Those are the guys you want for the Cardinals, not necessarily a running back. The one thing about him you have to like, well, he's got 6 touchdowns so far this year. He's a touchdown vulture, no question about it. Perhaps he'll give you more than that, which is great. Not a reliable fantasy option, but certainly a guy you want to keep at the end of your bench. When the guy has a bye, he's a good guy to plug in. All right, next up, Larry Johnson, likely to be suspended 3 weeks from the NFL. Conduct detrimental to the team or to the league. I don't know how to put it. The fact is he was involved in some criminal activity, throwing a drink on a woman, not good. He typically try to avoid those type of players, even in fantasy sports, because they usually do get suspended. That being said, Colby Smith from Tallahassee, Louisville product, will be in the starting lineup. That's not necessarily a good thing. The kid has struggled so far in that role. Probably want to avoid the Kansas City Chiefs aside from that tight end they have, Tony Gonzalez. Aside from that, look for other options. All right, let's continue down this list that I have in front of me. Denver Broncos, let's play a game. Who's healthy? Michael Pittman? No, you guessed wrong. He is not healthy right now. Apparently he's got some bruised ribs. You hate to see that. At least it's not broken. Selvin Young, on the other hand, injured also. He's got a sore groin. Hate to see that. And Andre Hall, well, he's got an ankle issue. So what next? Very simple. Ryan Terrain. This guy is very well known from his days at Arizona State. Was drafted in the 5th round, but right off the bat, Mike Shanahan said, this is a guy who's got some elite talent. He could be a premier running back in the NFL. My friends, it might start this week. Of course, they're coming off a bye week, and they need a running back to help make the team a little more consistent on the offensive side. Too much pressure on Brandon Marshall and Jay Cutler. I'll tell you, they're going to run the ball, and the name is Ryan Terrain. He's probably largely available in your fantasy league. Pick him up. There is a good chance he might start this weekend. He might get 15 to 25 carries. The fact is, as I said, not many healthy bodies in the backfield for the Broncos. All right, next up. Santonio Holmes, fresh off a suspension, will start for the Pittsburgh Steelers upcoming week. Now, the fact is this. He's been one of the best players in the league ever since he's been in the league. Last year, truly a breakout year, had a bunch of touchdowns, over 900 receiving yards, even though he missed 3 games. This year, a little inconsistent, but this is my concern. Nate Washington has been the premier deep route option so far for the team this year. Well, that's supposed to be Holmes' role. I still think Holmes has some talent and some value, but Big Ben Roethlisberger apparently re-injured, re-aggravated his shoulder injury. So once again, some issues about throwing that deep ball. Santonio Holmes maybe not the most reliable of options. If you have someone else, maybe a Deshaun Jackson, a Steve Breaston even, you might want to consider starting them ahead of this guy until he proves his worth once again. And now next up, Dante Culpepper. back in the NFL. Who would have known? So far for the Detroit Lions. Now, a couple things about this. First of all, it's probably going to take him some time to learn the system before they throw him out on the field. Second of all, Dan Orlovsky has actually been pretty good so far at quarterback for that team. Not that great. I know that some of it was just a couple of big passes to Calvin Johnson, but he's been decent. So I'm not necessarily sure Culpepper's going to take the reins of that offense and go flying with them, but at the same time, certainly something to take note of because a lot of people are desperate for quarterbacks these days. And finally, keep an eye on Deuce McAllister as well as a bunch of other guys who are currently being interviewed and questioned as far as some steroid speculation. Nothing definite about this yet, but the fact is with Reggie Bush out, and he's only going to be out another week or so, but with him out, Deuce McAllister obviously did enjoy a little bit more fantasy value than usual, but all of that might come to an end if he is suspended for the mandatory 4 games. So keep an eye on that situation. Of course, we'll keep you updated right here at opensports.com. Until we meet again, we'll talk some college football tomorrow.
So you think you can tackle a pro? There's only one way to find out. Click on fantasy at opensports.com.